Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for being here for part 2 of our Photoshop class with our instructor Nicole Kowalski and me. I'm Carrie Dubiel. So we just wanted to show you all really quickly before we launch into the class. This is our library website if you're not already familiar with it. If you go to up here at the top, it looks weird on mobile, but we're working on trying to fix this. Twinsburg Public Library, go across the top to these teal sort of boxes, and then click on databases under learning and research. If you scroll down, we have under employment resources and adult learning, we have lynda.com and Udemy that both have Photoshop classes. So I know that there was one student who needed some more advanced resources, that there's a lot of really advanced resources on there. You just click on lynda.com and you type in your information. And I don't want to type in my card number here, but once you get past, you can subscribe to a bunch of different classes. So if you have any other questions about that, let me know. If you need a Udemy account, just send me an email and we'll get you set up with that.
Jen Turk says, is Udemy free?
It is for library card holders. So if you don't have an account, if you click on where it says that databases, where it says request an account today, click on that. And then there's a little survey and then we will get you an account.
Lots of great resources if you're a library card member.
Yeah, it's really nice we're, I think, one of the only libraries around here that has it. So we get a lot of people asking for accounts from around the Northeast Ohio. So I will stop my screen share right now so that I can pass it over. And I'm going to turn my camera off. Sam is not here tonight. So if you have any tech issues, non-Photoshop tech issues, go ahead and chat me, but I think that we should be good to go.
All right, let me pull up the chat too so that I can make sure I see if anyone has any questions. Sharmila wants to know, how would we access our own pictures at the library site? So before I start, that's a good question. There are a couple ways you could do that. If you have some kind of cloud-based storage, like if you have a Google email address, you automatically get a certain amount of storage on the Google Drive for free. So you could access your Google Drive that way. You can make a free account with Dropbox and you can keep your photos in your Dropbox. And then what you would do is you just pull up a web browser when you're at the library, log into Dropbox, and then you can get them that way. Another way is if you have just like a flash drive or an external hard drive of some sort that plugs into a computer, you can have your photos saved to that external drive. And so those are the best ways that I recommend saving your work. I personally prefer cloud-based things, like iCloud storage, Google Drive storage, or Dropbox, because you can save from any location and then you can open that from any other location with your login. So I think the important thing to always remember is to log out of not only your Dropbox, but when you leave if you are using a computer at the library, to log out before you leave that computer too. So, okay, so today we're going to kind of do a quick refresher on some of the basics. Let me pull up my, so I did do some notes for you guys that I would like to just revisit because we talked about this last week. So this is just like a quick, and I'll add to this as we go throughout the class, but just a recap of what RGB stands for, CMYK, and then the resolution. So if you have a photo and you upload to Photoshop and you know you're going to print it, I recommend changing it to 300 dots per inch. So, and we can kind of revisit that if that's something that people want me to revisit. But for now, I'm gonna go back to Photoshop. Here we go. So the first thing is how to open a file in Photoshop. And so what you can do is you just click this button here on the left. You can either create new, and that's if you want to create like a blank page, kind of like what we did last week. But you can also just open a file or a photo by clicking open. And then you would want to find it in your files, wherever you have saved that. Okay, and then you just hit open. So this is one of the photos we're going to be working off of today, and I have saved that to the Dropbox, the library class Dropbox. And I've organized the files a little bit so that last week's photo is in a folder called Class 1, and this photo can be found under Class 2. So that is one way to do it, like I said, from the open button here. But let's say you have already opened it, it might show up in the Photoshop interface under recent. So you could always just click recent and then it will open that way. Let's say I want to open a different photograph and I want to work on multiple photographs at once and toggle between the two tabs. If you go to File, Open, you can also access it that way. And so at some point we will use this photo here to show you guys a cool trick. So I'm going to go ahead and open that as well. And so now what you'll notice is I have two tabs here at the top. This photo that we worked off of last week by Wesley Gibbs from Unsplash. And this photo for this week is also from Unsplash. It's by Sunita Lunin. I hope I said that correctly. Not that she'll probably ever know, but you know, names are important. So, so today, now that we've gone over those kind of basic things, I just want to show you guys a quick recap, like I said, from last week. So mode, RGB, and then we also have CMYK here. Let's just assume that I want to get this photograph print ready. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color profile. So like I was saying, it's under Image, Mode, CMYK, and you just check it and it'll give you like a warning and you just hit okay. Yes, I do want to change the color profile. And now we've changed that to CMYK. So we're one step closer to this being print ready. The next thing that I want to do is I'll go to Image Size, and I want to see what size this is. And so like I was saying, 72 is print resolution. I want this to be, or sorry, I misspoke. 72 is web resolution or screen resolution. I want this to be print resolution of 300. And you'll notice that when I changed the resolution to 300, it automatically changed the width and height here. And that's because the more pixels per inch that you have, it's going to change the size of the photograph. So this is now about 14 by 20. So just hit okay. And now we've changed the resolution of this photo. You can go back to image size, and you can also resize a photo this way. If you don't really want to change the proportions of this, as long as you'll see here, there's like these little lines here with what looks like a sort of chain icon. And that signifies that these dimensions are locked and they're going to change proportionally. So let's say I wanted to change this and I'm like, you know what, I already know that I don't want this to be any wider than 10 inches. If you change this to 10 inches, what you'll notice is it changes the height and the resolution. Now our resolution is more than 300 pixels per inch, which isn't ideal. You really only need 300, and that's industry standard. Any more than 300, you just don't need. So what you do is once you change the width to whatever the width is you need and the height, you know, if you're changing these dimensions proportionally, you hit this resample here. And what that allows you to do is it still locks the width and the height, but it allows you to change the resolution. So I'm going to reduce that to 300. And And the important thing to remember here is if you're reducing the resolution, like we just did, it was like 415 or something like that, and we're reducing it to 300, that's usually just fine. But if you're trying to go up from something, let's say you're trying to increase resolution, it's really difficult if the photo information is not there, it's just not there. So you really can't increase the resolution from like 72 to 300 because the photo information is not there, and it's just going to end up making your photo look pixelated and low quality. So that's an important note to remember about resolution. Okay, so I've resized my photo. And let me see what my syllabus says the next thing is. All right, so let's say I wanted to change, I've now changed the resolution and the width of the photo. The photo is, if you remember, 10 inches wide, but I don't want it to be 15 inches tall. Maybe I want it to be 12 inches tall. What you can do is if you go to the crop tool here in the toolbar, you have all these different options for cropping a photo. There's ratio, width by height, by resolution, and then there's also some presets here, which is really, really pretty convenient. So you could use like a 1x1 square if you know that maybe you're resizing this for social media where a 1x1 square is prevalent, or you know, let's say your 5x7 is a really common size to get prints printed in. So you can go ahead and you could just crop this to a 5x7. And it's nice because the crop tool shows you in the frame this grid that helps you center the important things within the frame. So, you know, you can use this grid to center the woman's face in the composition. And it kind of gives you the edges and blurs out the part of the photo that will not be included in the crop. So there's all these different crops here that are kind of preset, but the one that we're going to do is width by height by resolution. So the important thing to remember is usually if you see something like 5x7, 8x10, it's always going to show the width first. So the width we know you want to be 10 inches. Go ahead and type that in. Height, let's just say 12 inches. And then the resolution, we're going to keep at 300. And then you would go ahead and you would move the woman in the frame as you see fit. And once you're happy with the crop, you're going to go ahead and hit the check mark to accept and commit the current crop. So there you go. So that is one way to change the size or crop a photo. And I think that that's really pretty, I think that's really pretty important skill to know, because it can also help save you a lot of time later on down the road if you make sure that your photos are set up correctly and the resolution is correct right from the beginning. We're not going to crop this photo today, though. Now that I've showed you guys how, unless you guys want to see it again, I think we can kind of move on from that to something a little more exciting. Oh, no, I do have one more boring thing to show you guys. So do you ever take a photo, maybe even on your iPhone or something, and it's crooked, or sideways, and you're like, oh my goodness. So one of the first things that you need to do is go to image rotation, and you have all these different options. You can rotate something 180 degrees to 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise. And then you can also choose something different here, and you can flip the canvas horizontal or vertical. So these are all really pretty handy things that you can utilize to rotate your image. So we're just gonna bring her back to normal there because it was actually oriented correctly to begin with. But that's an important little trick that I think is good for everyone to know. So the first thing that I want to show you guys today, this is going to focus more on retouching. And I think that this is a really good skill to have. And it's actually pretty simple. There's a lot of simple things you can do that, it can help you make your home photos better. Or if you're ever looking through an album maybe, and, like an old album of photos, maybe they're even Polaroids or whatever it may be, from your childhood, and maybe they're sort of faded a little bit, or they have scratches on it, or, red eye is really common. There's all kinds of ways that you can fix some of those things in Photoshop. So the first thing that I'm going to show you guys is there's a couple of presets that Photoshop has, and they don't always work well. I'd say they work well maybe 50% of the time, but they're worth trying because you can always undo the action. So these are pretty helpful because sometimes they solve the problem for you very quickly and you don't need to do a whole lot else. So if you go to image, there's auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color. And auto color doesn't come up as an option right now because we're in CMYK, but we can click auto tone and you'll see that it automatically kind of brightens it for us a little bit. And you may not like that. This made her skin a little more yellow, but I actually think that it looks kind of nice because it increased the contrast a little bit there. So, and then auto contrast is another one. And it really didn't do a whole lot, very, very minor. But those are usually the two that I start with to see, does it improve it, or do I feel like I could do a better job using one of the adjustments in here? So, in the adjustments, we have brightness and contrast, and you can toggle, you can use the slider and you can see how it impacts the photo. Whenever I am brightening a photo or increasing the contrast, I always do such small amounts. Like I would really just maybe brighten it up by 3. And then contrast, I really don't do a whole lot there either. I might, like the farthest I go is like 7 or 8. And, using your layers panel, you can see how it impacts your image. And the easy way to do that is just by clicking this eye here, and you can turn that layer on and off and see what the difference looks like. So, there's a few different adjustments. There's photo filter. If you wanted to make the image look old, you could, under filter, you could select this sepia, which kind of makes it sort of, that brown filtered look that maybe, is popular on Instagram or other photo editing sites. I don't really, use that too much, but, you have a lot of options. There's a lot of fun things you can play around with in there. So the first thing that I like to remind people to do before they do anything else, and I'm actually going to go to my history panel, and I'm going to click on this right here. Let's see, CMYK image size. Here we go. I'm going to go back to the beginning because I was kind of just showing you guys some cool stuff here. I don't actually want any of these changes because I think that it's really important to remember that when you're retouching a photograph, you should never work off of the original just in case something happens and you save over it. You don't want to do that. So what I recommend is creating a copy of the background to work off of. The easiest way to do that is to drag the layer onto the new layer icon, which is that square with a plus in it. And it creates, oh, did you hear that? That was my cat. I told you guys. She got spooked. So yeah, it creates a copy of the background, and that's titled background copy. And that background layer is going to remain locked. And so when we're working, we're going to work off of the background copy, because if we somehow mess up and then, we feel like we made an error that we for some reason can't come back from, the good news is you could delete the background copy and you still have the unedited background to work off of. So I think that's one of the most important things to remember when you're editing photos. So now that I've created a background copy, I would do that auto tone and auto contrast, and I would edit it however else I felt like. But typically I like to do my retouching before I create a lot of adjustment layers. And you can kind of do this in whatever order you prefer. But the most important thing to remember is to create that copy of the background. So the first thing that I want to show you guys is the most common thing that people have an issue with is the red eye. And there is hold on, let me get this chat out of the way. There is a really easy way to get rid of it. And it is here under the spot healing or healing brush tool. If you click and hold down on that, you'll see at the bottom is red eye tool. All right. And pupil size and darken amount are both set to 50. So another thing to note is a lot of times you can't do some edits in CMYK. For the reason for that, I'm not entirely sure. You can only do some edits in RGB. So now if I go to image, that auto color will pop up, which it didn't before. But regardless, a lot of times I would change the color mode to CMYK at the end, but it was more appropriate to go over that at the beginning. So anyways, for the time being, we've changed it back to RGB, even though this is a photograph that the intent would be to print it. That gives us the option to use this red eye tool. And we're going to zoom in on her eyes. And you're just simply going to use that little plus sign with the eye next to it. You're going to draw almost like a square around her entire iris. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And you might have to kind of do it 2 times and play with it, make it larger as you go, just so that it's like perfectly centered. And as you're going in there with it, let's see, there we go. That looks pretty good. So there is one way to correct the red eye, and sometimes it might not do a totally perfect job. So what I'll do is I'll go in with black. I'll find my paintbrush tool, right? And I'll zoom in even closer, and I'm going to bring my opacity down so that it's not like a totally black brush. And so I'm going to bring it down to like 25%. And then if you right click, it will pull up size and hardness. And I want to bring the hardness down so that it's not such a hard edge on it. It's like a softer edge, sort of like this one. See, this is like a hard brush and this is soft. And then adjust the size as you think you might need it. And you can kind of go in there and you can kind of fix the red eye there using your brush tool as well if the red eye tool didn't do a perfect job. And so let's zoom out. That looks pretty good, right? Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. So you got rid of the red eye. That's our first step. And you'll notice I did that all again while I was on the background copy layer. So if we turn that off, you'll see that the background still has the red eye. And that's what we're on here, but we want to work off this one. So the next thing that I'd like to show you guys is how to remove blemishes and imperfections. And this is actually really pretty easy. So the tool that I would like to use for that, there are a couple of different tools. The first tool that I'm going to show you guys is located where that same red eye tool was. And I'm going to click and hold down, and that is the spot healing brush tool. And this works best in really small areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to you guys. I'm going to make my the little circle really pretty small to fit around like this little freckle here on her nose. And you go ahead and you just go like that and it erases it. But you'll notice it doesn't always do a perfect job. So, you know, it didn't do a great job there. Let's try it right here on just this large pore. It does a little bit of a better job there. So that's one thing. And that tends to work better on areas that are pretty simple. So let's see how it works here. So it worked really well right there, right? Because there's not a lot of stuff around it. Not a lot of shadows. There's a lot of the same color and tone around it. So it worked really well there. But this larger blemish here, in order to get rid of that, I would use this tool here, which is called the Clone Stamp Tool. So the Clone Stamp Tool, what you do is you choose a section of the photo to basically copy and paste over another area. And so what you do is you're going to hold down the Option key, and it's going to kind of bring up this like target looking icon. And you're going to, you can adjust also the circle to be larger, smaller, and that's with the like parentheses keys on my keyboard. So you can adjust it to be larger or smaller, and you can also adjust it by right-clicking on it. And I like to have the hardness all the way down when I'm photoshopping, retouching a face, so that the edges around it blend in really seamlessly. And you can change the size this way. So, whoops. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to sample the area that you want to essentially copy and paste. And for me, I'm going to try a little bit from here. And then I also, when I retouch, I like to sample from a couple of different areas. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to click. And when you do that, it samples that area. And you'll see as I move my cursor up, it moves that area of her skin with it. And you can kind of click around. And so I didn't totally remove the blemish, but I removed part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my circle a little smaller. I'm going to sample this area here. I'm going to kind of just like even out the skin tone. And I like to go in and sample, like I was saying, different areas to cover up a blemish. So I'm going to sample now this area. I'm going to very carefully bring it down here. I'm going to sample that and bring it over here. And I just very carefully bring in these tones and kind of mesh it together. But sometimes you'll notice that like right in this area, it's not totally even. And so what you can do is you can take the Clone Stamp tool, find a larger area that has no blemishes, so like maybe this area, go ahead and sample it. Then up here in the top, I reduce the opacity to maybe like 25% again. And then you can go here, and what it does is if you click, it basically just takes the different areas of the skin and then just very slightly overlays it over top. So, but I want to get rid of the rest of this red here. So I'm going to bring my opacity back up to 100. And I'm going to sample from right about here, going to bring that down, sample from right around here. And you just kind of keep working in sampling different areas to remove a blemish that's large. And again, right here, you'll see that there's an area of uneven tone. And so what I would want to do is I would want to sample that and go back to my opacity, bring that down. I'm just going to kind of try to blend that together. And that also, it's nice because it utilizes her skin texture, the differences in the tone of her skin, and it makes it look really natural. So that's how we've gotten rid of that blemish. And now if I click off this background copy layer, you'll see there's the background layer that had the blemish, and this is what it looks like now. Jen says, how is a background different than a layer? The answer, Jen, is it's actually not. The background is a layer itself. So currently, if you look in my layers panel, I have 3 layers. We have background, background copy, and the brightness and contrast. So good question. The thing to remember is we're just creating a second layer, basically a duplicate of the background image that we are working off of to retouch. I like to do that for a number of reasons, like I've stated, but I also think that it can be really cool for you to zoom out and you can see the progress that you've made in your retouching. Okay, so I'm going to go back in, and that's the Clone Stamp tool. We have another tool here under the Spot Healing Brush tool that's really similar. It's just called the Healing Brush tool, and it works in a very similar way to the Clone Stamp tool. I would go in and I would change the hardness here. And then it works in the same way where you sample an area and you basically kind of just get rid of it in that way. So it's not very different. They have a very similar function. I guess it's just sort of preference. Okay. So that is how I would do that. I see a little area here that I could probably just get with the spot healing brush tool. And the difference between the spot healing brush tool and the healing brush tool is spot healing brush tool focuses on an individual spot, and it doesn't require you to sample anything else, because it is going to just take information from around what you're healing to eliminate the imperfection. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get rid of this blemish. I'm using my clone stamp tool here again, and I'm just going to go over it. Oh, I have my opacity down, so I'm going to bring that back up. There we go. Got rid of that one. Got rid of this one. And you'll notice you don't actually have to do a whole lot to make a really big impact. The only other one that I might consider doing here is on her forehead. And other than that, you know, I think the thing to remember is you don't want to look like the photo that you just finished retouching is from the cover of a grocery store tabloid. I think that things like skin texture and differences in skin tone and even the occasional freckle or blemish are actually really nice, because we're humans and humans are not perfect. And you know, there are photos where you really want to get rid of that really big zit or whatever, and I understand that, but just remember to, you know, kind of love who you are, and you don't need to get rid of every single imperfection. Let's say you have an area though where you would like to maybe eliminate the appearance of some fine lines or wrinkles. Using the blur tool here, which looks like a little drop shape, it works similar to a brush, where you kind of are just like brushing an area and it blurs it. So I would change the size of the circle. You can also change the strength. I prefer to use around 45 or 50%, but some people maybe want something a little stronger. Just go ahead and drag it, brush over that area, and you can see it reduces the appearance of fine lines and pores. Another tool in that same area is the Sharpen tool. Sometimes people might like to do this around eyelashes. Again, it's going to show up as like a circle, and you can choose the strength. The strength here is automatically set to 50. If you just go over it, you might find that, you know, it also increases the appearance of the pixels, if you notice that, where I did it. So a lot of people don't prefer to use this tool for that reason. Okay. The other one in here is the Smudge tool. This can be a popular tool for getting rid of blemishes as well, but I don't prefer to use this method. I prefer to use one of the other methods I showed you. And basically it literally takes and it smudges the pixels. So I can show you guys basically, you know, if you go like this, you can kind of see it smudged through her lip, right? But we don't actually want to, we don't want to do that. If you change the strength to like 100 and then you go and you smudge through, it's basically dragging the pixels from this area and smudging it through the entire photo. And, you know, I don't really find a purpose for it personally. So I'm going to use my history panel, and I'm going to go back. I'm going to only use the changes I made with the blur tool. The smudge tool might be better if you reduce the strength and then you kind of went like this. You might be able to reduce and soften the appearance of this blemish here. So, you know, there's purpose and a time for it, but again, I typically don't really use it. And then we also have the dodge tool and the burn tool. So the dodge tool is going to lighten an area. I might use this occasionally for brightening her eyes. this might be something I might do to brighten her eyes. So it's going to show up as, again, that circle. You can change the size of it. You can change the exposure, so how strong it is. It's more around 50%-ish. You can go in and it'll brighten up the whites of her eyes like this. And, you know, maybe you want to do that to her entire eye, to her iris, to make her eyes stand out a little more. So a tool that it has the opposite effect of that is the burn tool. And sometimes people will use this to just darken certain areas of the skin to create more contrast or depth of features, or even just to create the appearance maybe of like eyeliner or a thicker eyelash. And so if you go and you just drag it along her eye there, it's almost like you're sort of applying makeup, and it can be a really quick and easy way to add a little bit something to your eyes. See? So what I'm going to do, just to show everyone the changes that we've made so far, I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like when I toggle this background copy and turn it off. So that's what it looked like before, and this is where we are now. And you'll notice that all the changes I've made they're really pretty minimal. We're not doing anything crazy, but it does make a really good difference, right? It makes a big difference. Okay, so we've been using the history tool the whole time, or history panel. So I'm going to show you, we're going to go to this image here. So I'm going to show you guys this really cool feature while we're here. So I'm going to use my quick selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and select this whole area. And I can't remember where it is. It's under edit, I believe. Yep. So under edit, once you have an area selected, under edit, you're going to go down to sky replacement. And you are going to see this panel pop up, and you're going to have the opportunity to replace the sky. And you can click down and you can choose a different sky here, blue skies. I think this is so crazy, but I love it. It's really neat. And you can go through and change it to whatever you want. And this is kind of cool. That makes it look really, looks really ethereal. The rainbow there in the background. So, and then you have all of these different adjustments that you can make to it. The brightness to make it look more realistic. If the photo is kind of dark, you can kind of change things so that it matches the rest of the photo really well. And this is a really great tool for if you ever have that photo, let's say, you're in Ohio and you take a photo of your family and the sky is just gray and dingy and you're just so disappointed with the way the sky looks, but the rest of the photo is beautiful. This is what you would use to change out and give yourself a bright blue, beautiful sky. So I can't tell you how much I love this tool. I think that it is probably one of the best things Photoshop has done. So that is the sky replacement tool. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. And then the last thing I wanted to show you guys today, and I showed you guys this a little bit before, but it's worth revisiting. If you wanted to place type over the image, you would use your type tool. You could draw a box. That's going to automatically create a new layer. If you type something in it, oh, you can't see the pull down. So we'll go back to that. Here we go. So we're in here. It's under at the very, very top. You have like Photoshop, File, Edit. If you click Edit, it will be under Edit. So Edit, Sky Replacement. Okay. That is where that is. All right. So going back here, we have this type layer. We're going to click inside of it. I'm going to pull up my character panel because I think that that's a pretty important panel to familiarize yourself with. So you guys can, you know, sometimes people will want to put type over an image. A lot of people ask me how to do this because they might have a picture of a pet or an infant that they want to put like the, you know, Johnny he weighs 18 pounds and he has 6 teeth. You know, they want to maybe do something like that where they're putting type over the image, or somebody might want to put the date over an image or create, you know, an invitation of some sort or a wedding announcement or birth announcement. So this is a really great way for you to overlay type. So you could type in whatever you wanted. You are invited. And then if you highlight your text, you can go in here and you can find a different font. You can change the size of it, the leading of it, which the leading really means the space between 2 lines of copy. And then you could even, you know, if you have, if you want the option to have everything be all caps, you can click this little TT icon here, all caps. You could do small caps. You could make everything a superscript. So there's all these different options in the character panel. I guess just use your imagination and kind of try to imagine that some of these things are similar to maybe like Word, Microsoft Word. And so as you're clicking around, if you just remember to hover over it and you kind of try to find those similarities between a program that you're familiar with, I think that that's always really helpful to do. Okay. So let me look back at my lesson plan for today. So a simple project that I think everyone could do, and I would even love to see it if you guys want to come with your project for next week, is find a photograph. Maybe it's in an album, or, you know, maybe it's something on your phone that you've taken where there's significant red eye or some sort of a blemish that you want to eliminate to improve the picture. A simple project that I think everyone could do, not necessarily as homework, because I don't want to assign homework, but I think that it would be really good for you guys to take these skills and put them to use. So if you guys coming out of this class want to try to implement some of these new skills yourself, bring it to the next class. Maybe we could kind of do a quick show and tell at the beginning of next class or at the end, if you guys are more comfortable with that. And then you guys can ask questions if you have any specific questions about any of the things that I did today that maybe weren't as clear when you went to do it yourself. So that was the end of my presentation for today. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer, or does anyone want me to do anything again?